All right. Well, welcome back to where'd he go? The Theologizing Subject. Today, we're talking to Reverend, that's what they call him in that neck of the woods, Reverend Drew Kirtley. Really excited to talk with him. So, yeah, I like to just kind of start off asking you to share a little bit about yourself, where you're at, what you're doing. I kind of gave a little spoiler with my intro. But, yeah, if you just want to maybe tell us a little bit about you, that'd be great.
Okay. Let's see. What was the question?
Just tell us,
this is going to go, by the way.
Your name, where you're from, what are you doing with your life, that sort of thing.
Well, I'm Drew Kirtley. Grew up in Tonkawa, Oklahoma, and have lived all around Oklahoma. Graduated from OU in 2009, and in 2010 I started going to Phillips Theological Seminary. It's very trippy. I can't hear myself talk because of the headphones.
You sound great.
I'm like, do I sound stupid? I don't know. Yeah, graduated from Phillips. It's embarrassing to say the year that I graduated. What's that movie, Tommy Boy, where he says, a lot of people go to school for 7 years.
Anyway, you beat me. I just started back, so.
Good luck.
Yeah.
So 2016, I was ordained in the Christian Church Disciples of Christ, and I graduated from Phillips with my MDiv. So let's see. Do you want like a history of churches that I've worked at?
Yeah.
What do you want me to do?
That'd be great. Absolutely. Yeah, so where have you worked at?
I started in youth ministry in Chandler, Oklahoma, and bounced around from there. Was at the Wesley House for 2 years. You were there. From there, we went to Duncan, got married, went to Duncan. We were at First Christian Church at Duncan and the Well, which is kind of a contemporary church that's a ministry of the First Christian Church. And then we moved to Hennessy. Then we moved to Alva, First Christian Church of Alva. And somewhere in between all those, we had 3 daughters. So yeah, you can probably tell my brain is a little scrambled. Yeah.
Hey, you did. I mean, if somebody asks me dates and times, I'm not going to give it. That was a very clear answer. So, yeah, man. So within that time, so it sounds like you've been in church your whole life, at least as far as I know. So in that time, has there been any like moments of like theologically speaking, or just where you've kind of had a light bulb moment, or you changed your views on anything, or doubted anything that you were kind of raised being taught, or anything like that?
Yeah, there's
a big loaded one, but
yeah, there's probably several. You may have to, if I'm not specific enough, you might have to prod me.
Okay.
Let's see. Gosh, there was probably a 4-year period where I wasn't really involved in church. That's not to say that I wasn't a Christian or stopped believing anything specifically. But just like probably a lot of people, in college, wasn't involved in church life. And what kept me involved was volunteering at these summer camps at Central Christian Camp in Guthrie. And through that, just kind of making connections and meeting people. And it just happened to be a Disciples of Christ church, which is the former denomination of the church that I was raised in. So I always felt like I had a personal connection to that. And then, about 2010, which is the year after I graduated from college, I was just kind of thrust into a situation where the church I was working for, which was the church in Chandler, they wanted to pay for me to go to seminary. which, as I understood, was a master's degree. And so I wasn't really planning on like staying in ministry forever. But I was like, hey, a master's just in anything would be great if it's free.
Yeah.
Um, so so I did that, and I think through going to Phillips, I just kind of never changed my mind. I have, I always say, I have like the least calling story of any calling story. I just kind of took a church job because I was not sure what I was going to do, and that was 14 years ago.
Man.
So
Yeah. Well, cool.
yeah.
Was there anybody at Phillips or maybe just churches along the way that kind of influenced you, or maybe people that you read or listened to that influenced you in that
Oh
theology? And
gosh, tons of people, and I kind of have a, I guess you'd call it like a mutt breed of Christianity. Like I have influences from all kinds of different denominations, and even like non-Christian influences, or people that I just happen to read or run into. Um, I don't really know where to start on that question. There's been a lot.
yeah. Yep.
Anything specific?
I mean, how about your professors? I mean, did you have any professors that maybe come to mind? Or I know it's
Yes,
been a while, but
that's a good question. There was a guy named Brandon Scott, and it won't take anybody very long to find out about him if they give him a Google. He's an interesting guy.
Mhm.
Um, I don't know that I can speak for his personal faith life. I know that he was a member of a church when he taught me, but he was such kind of a mysterious guy about his personal life and his personal faith. And I never, he wasn't the type of guy you wanted to like poke and prod, or ask more questions than were necessary. I'd had people before I
Ooh,
took
that
his
makes me want to.
class. Yeah, I know. I would now, but back then.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'd had people say, he's made people cry, drop out of school, and I was like, I kind of want to take the class now. Um, I didn't find him at all like that. I love the guy. He was a little intimidating, but if you can let that bounce off of you, it didn't affect me. But he taught a class called Historical Jesus, where we focused on Jesus' life from a historical perspective, uh, and also the parables. And so it just blew my mind for the first time ever, thinking about Jesus as a real human being and not like this mythical figure, like a fairy
Hmm.
tale. Um, a lot of stuff in the class people would disagree with. Um, and really, I would say it's a hard class to take for a Christian who is not really firm in what they believe, because they can be thrown off really easily. Uh, if I'm rambling, just cut me off. But
No, you're good.
um,
This is what we're all about.
okay, so for example, and I'm trying to remember all this. I didn't do hardly any preparation for this. Uh,
You're good, man.
he he uh, he would say like things like "leave your faith at the door." And so if somebody had a question, I remember one lady uh, said, "Well, I believe blah blah blah," and he goes, "I'm not interested in what you believe." And I was like, "Whoa,
You're looking around.
yeah." Like if I could see how that would intimidate somebody, but we were talking about, from the historical perspective, who this guy was, not from the perspective of, I believe this is the Son of God. That's not what the class is about, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, more from a historical kind of
Yeah,
perspective and
yeah.
trying to get you to think about
Jesus,
it in
the
that vein, I
person.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you could take the class as a non-Christian and learn about Jesus if that was your cup of tea. Um,
Yeah.
but man, I loved it, and so I teach. now I teach 2 classes at Northwestern here in Alva, and I incorporate a lot of that, especially the parables, learning about the parables,
Nice.
Jesus's storytelling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that from the book. That's pretty cool. So overall was your experience in seminary? I mean, was it mostly positive, or was there a lot of like ups and downs about that, or did you
Gosh.
hear anything that made you kind of say, "Oh, I don't think that's right," or
Yeah.
anything
Yeah. A
like that?
lot. And I think, looking back, they encouraged you to say that. Um, God, I wish I was braver back then when it comes to like incorporating stuff in my papers that maybe I wasn't, you know, I knew would, maybe set one of my professors off or be a start just disagreement. Because I mostly tried to like stay in my lane and keep my head down and just work and get it over with because I had trouble
Hmm.
focusing on like school and personal life and working at the church. So I wasn't really interested in stirring the pot, but uh, there was a lot of that. And I always tell people if they ask what it was like, I say the first semester of seminary for me was like taking a box, and in this box, everything that you've ever learned about your faith or Christianity, uh, the Bible from when you were a kid is in this box. And sometime within the first few weeks, you dump it out. You try to keep from dumping it out, and then you realize that's what's making this frustrating. Is I don't want to dump that box out. So when I dumped it out, I remember that drive home. I was talking to one of my friends on the phone, just kind of feeling empty. Like, okay, I'm willing to like just for the sake of trying to learn something, let go of everything I've ever thought. Um, and then what I found was you slowly start to put stuff back in the box, stuff that you go, yeah, that thing I believed since I was 10, I still believe it. I'm going to put it back in there. Or like uh, maybe I believe that, but I believe it a little differently than I did. And so I'm going to put it back in the box, but I'm going to put it over here and stack it a different way. And some stuff I never put back in. And then some stuff's new stuff you put in the box. Does that make sense?
Oh, no, totally makes sense. I think I've had a similar sort of experience without going to seminary, but just reading everything I can get my hands on, and kind of
Yeah.
every month, having that crisis of like, what do I believe, and then
Mm-hmm.
kind of slowly putting things back together. Still totally in that process, but yeah,
Oh yeah. I don't think I've
makes a
ever
lot of
stopped
sense.
that.
Yeah, it's good, man.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's cool. Very relatable experience, though. Yeah. Well, my next question. Sorry, I'm still working on talking on a podcast,
You're
but
good.
it's been a lot of fun though, just learning from people.
How many
Um,
people have you talked to?
I think you'd be number 11. So yeah, Pastor Derek was the first.
God,
So
it's hard to
you know
beat.
him.
It's hard to beat.
Yeah, he's pretty cool. He's pretty smart, pretty well thought out. Um, yeah, a lot more than I am. But yeah. So a weird one that people normally have a hard time with that I'm gonna go ahead and throw it at you. But is there so just talking about kind of putting the pieces back together? Is there anything kind of that you've put together that you feel is worth trying to persuade others in that, or is it more like, yeah, it's okay, this is where I'm at, other people don't need to be there? Or are there certain things where you're like, yeah, I think you should think this? You know what I'm saying? I
Yeah.
think
So
it's worth
like,
persuading you of this.
okay, like things I feel strongly enough about, I try to get other people on board.
Hmm.
Um, I know there are some. I gotta sit here for a second. You can cut all the dead air, right?
Yeah,
Uh,
I keep it raw though.
okay, man. So I know there are just from teaching classes. That's a whole different ball game. people come to church to, I think there's certain sort of acceptance that if you're the pastor, most people are just going to listen to what you say and then leave. And if they want to talk about it or disagree about it, they'll do that on their own.
Yeah.
But in class, it's really interesting. And I know I do that. I'm trying to think of a good example.
It's a hard one on the fly.
There. So I'll throw one out just so that you have something interesting because I don't think I'm going to be an interesting guest, but I'll give you some interesting material. There's a like an outlook, I guess you'd call it, on the miracle stories, right? One of my favorite ones is the Jesus feeding the multitudes. So have you ever heard a take on that was totally different from anything you'd ever heard before? Or have
I
you?
mean, I
Or has
remember
it?
hearing that they added more because of the family units, but I guess that's not that interesting. I don't know. They added more, like there was more people than it
Oh,
seemed to imply.
okay.
But that's probably not where you're going with that.
No, I mean, I think every take is interesting to me. I've never heard somebody speak or preach about the Bible and say something. Even if I disagree with it, I go, I wonder how they got there. Um, but one I really find interesting on this is the idea. So we were challenged to, I think it was essentially a thinking exercise. Uh, See what you can garner from these stories, setting the supernatural aside. It's like that's pretty hard with, you know, Jesus turning the loaves and the fish into, multiplying everything. Um, but what it boiled down to was the idea that, do you remember the boy that the disciples brought forward um, to give his food, to give what he had? So the idea comes from, I guess, a good way to put it would be like sort of a church potluck situation where possibly the miracle is Jesus inspiring one person to share what they have, and then other people start to do the same. And then all of a sudden you have enough for everybody and more left over. So, like, I know there are times when I don't bring food to a potluck dinner and I still eat. And it seems like
Yeah.
everybody still eats. And there's always like, somebody take this, we have leftovers, right? So the question that was posed to us was, could the miracle have been, instead of Jesus snapping his fingers and like magic happening, could it have been that everybody brought a little bit of food and they didn't want to share? And essentially Jesus kind of pulled or inspired them in a way, I guess you could say, pulled it out of them
Mm-hmm.
to say, okay, I'll throw mine in the middle or whatever, I'll offer mine if you'll offer yours. And then everybody starts to do it. Um, so that's one that I always go, gosh, it makes so much sense. And it kind of gives you something to take home in that I can do that, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
I can't multiply fish and bread. And I feel like I tried. Even as a kid, you hear these miracle stories and you're like, I wonder if I could walk on water. Um, but I can do that. I can share what I have and hope that other people share what they have. And you might even call that a miracle, right? If people are so stubborn or so greedy that we don't ever want to give. Am I rambling? Does that make sense?
No, yeah, no, that's great. I'd never thought about that, but it sounds very Jesus-like. You know,
Right.
like
So,
don't just pray for your neighbor, give him something. I don't know if
yeah,
Jesus said that. Pretty sure Jesus said that.
something like that.
But
But to answer your question, I don't really push that per se, um, as much as I just kind of offer it up, take it or leave it.
Yeah.
Um, and I think a lot of times people do both or do one or the other. There have been students in my class that have said, "Oh, that's really cool. I like that," and others that have said, "No, you have to believe, this way or no way," right? So
Yeah.
I don't know.
I like it. Very good. Very good. Well,
Do you think it's possible?
yeah. At first, when you said it, I was like, well, weren't they like out in the wilderness? But I guess if they all maybe had something, it makes sense. They had a
Yeah.
little fish wrap or something on their person.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But are
It's
you
feasible.
that like are you open with like different interpretations of um, Bible stuff, or is it more like this has to be the way or the answer,
I'd
the
say
interpretation?
not that I think there's anything wrong with some speculation. I just don't tend to do it a lot. I'm a lot more likely to just like pull from over here. What do these guys say about this? What do these guys, and try to get a little smorgasbord of like,
Mm-hmm.
what's the Reformed tradition saying about this? What are the Arminians saying about, what are the Lutherans saying? This guy back here is a Lutheran, by the way.
Yeah.
What are they? So yeah, I guess I'm much more. Yeah, I don't know. I tend to just like, what are the smart people saying? Let's just think about what they're saying, and
Yeah.
yeah, I don't tend to speculate a lot, and I think I've maybe gotten that a little bit from the Lutheran tradition because they kind of lean that way.
Right. And I
But
didn't
yeah, I
come
don't
up
know.
with that.
Totally cool with it,
I'm the
but
same
yeah,
way. I gather information too. I don't know if I've ever come up with my own interpretation on it. I don't know what that says about me, but
that'd be tough. Be tough to find a new one. I don't
yeah.
know, but yeah, I don't know. I've kind of been. I had a weird working at camp experience where someone actually helped me understand this, and I hope to have him on the podcast at some point. But he kind of like helped me understand like, hey, you're deconstructing, and I know that's like a buzzword, but he was, and I think I'm deconstructing in a good way, not in the way that I'm like, yeah, I don't believe any of this, and that kind of thing. But I do think he
Right.
kind of helped me understand like, yeah, this is kind of what's going on. I feel like everything is just kind of crumbled, and you're putting it back together like we were talking about.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway, yeah, it's fun. It's fun stuff. Also terrifying stuff at times.
Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah. So what about this book though? This guy wrote a book, and it's pretty good. I've really enjoyed reading it. Full disclosure, I am on Avengers: Infinity War, so I'm not quite done,
Oh man.
but I needed a couple more sittings. So, but it's been
I,
really great so far. Really enjoyed hearing you
I'm
out on
glad.
the movie stuff. I'm a big fan as well. So, obviously, you wrote a book on it, so I'm not as big of a fan as movies as you are,
Well,
but I do love
I'll
movies.
take it. That's it. That's it for me too. Um, just have stuff in your head you got to get out.
Yeah. So, what was that like? I mean, how'd you start writing that? What was the process like?
Let me grab one for you real quick.
Do it.
So this is I didn't take this class, but this is one of the textbooks that same professor I was telling you about um, wrote this, and it's essentially, I think maybe you could even say a little more serious uh, scholarly version of what mine was, um, but it's essentially the same thing. He takes movies and he just writes about them, but they're all like uh, 20th century movies, like 70s, 80s, 90s.
Hmm.
And so I just had the idea it'd be cool if somebody or me if I did one that was 21st century movies, it's hard when there's 100 movies a year. Like that was the hardest part. Was like, what do I pick?
Yeah.
Well, I just have to
Yeah.
pick what I like, But I'll read you this thing that he said um, that I loved. Give me a second. I may have even left it in the book or included it. Where is it? Give me one second. So he says, this is in his introduction. He says, a few years ago, it dawned on me that some of my students thought differently than I did. I mean that their thinking process was different, literally. Though able to read and write, they truly came alive when discussing television shows or movies. Their powers of analysis were greater in this area than in the traditional literary one. From that point on, I increasingly sensed that my fate might parallel that of the dinosaurs. Our culture had passed over some great divide, and I was on the other side. So he essentially started using movies and TV shows in his classes, and he just claims that people were way more apt to start talking because they got excited. I was like, man, that's me. And so it was just a fun little project. I say fun. It was kind of daunting there toward the end. But once I got it out, I haven't touched it since. I've read the introduction again, but I can't. I don't know if you're this way or not. Like, I can't go back, and I've never watched a sermon back ever. It's the same with the book.
I've reread some of my sermons. It's painful.
Yeah.
I don't advise it.
I don't want to know what that version of me last week said.
Oh, man. Yeah. Yep. Relatable. Man, so speaking of movies, I don't know if this is your experience, just being a movie lover. Deborah will tell you, like, most movies that we watch nowadays, I was never a picky movie guy. Like, I would watch a movie, be entertained, walk away with, like, oh, that was great. But it seems like the past 5 years, maybe, like 90% of the movies I see are just, like, they go nowhere. They're just, there's not a clear good, there's not a clear bad, really postmodern feeling. And some people maybe are into that, but I'm just like, I don't think these movies are good. Like, I don't see a good movie very often, where 5 years ago it was like I saw a good movie like every week.
Yeah.
So I don't know what your feeling on that is lately, but
I think they get watered down, especially like, I hate to pick on, no, I don't hate to pick on Netflix because they're millionaires or whatever.
Yeah, that'd be all right.
Like, I feel like 95% of everything on Netflix is just garbage. But I do feel like there's still those kind of gems out there. Like me and, Matt Parcher.
Mm-hmm.
We did the Barbenheimer double feature last weekend of Barbie and Oppenheimer.
Oh, okay.
I love both of those movies. But you're right. There has been probably way more just kind of nothing, empty. I mean, other than, occasionally there's like in the book, a couple of those Avengers movies I thought were really great.
Mm-hmm.
They are kind of harder to find. It seems like they were more common 10 years ago, 15 years ago. Yeah.
Do you like any of the Marvel stuff?
That. God, it's been a while since
I lost
they
track
had
of
one
it all, and I don't think it's as good.
Endgame blew me away.
Endgame was great.
That whole little 5-year, probably 2014 to 2018, they were really, really good. What did I watch that I liked? I liked the what was it, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the show. It was one of their Disney Plus shows.
Yeah, I didn't see that one. I think I dropped off before then,
Oh,
probably.
the recent Guardians I thought was pretty good.
It was. I thought that honestly, I watched that and I was like, okay, there's still good movies. Like
We might be
we're gonna
back
be
on
okay.
track. Yeah,
But man, yeah, I don't know. It's been
I do think
a
they're
dismal
so
era.
we've got a theater in Alva, um, and I do think so. You heard about the Barbenheimer, like the Fab, right? Like people going to double feature those two drastically different movies.
I did not hear about that. Is
Okay,
that a thing?
so yeah, so like online on Twitter, wherever, uh, people saw that Barbie and Oppenheimer were coming out on the same day, so they started using the hashtag Barbenheimer, and the idea was to go to both of them in the same day. I was like, man, that would be pretty trippy because you have Barbie and then the father of the atomic bomb. Um, they were both great. I loved both of them. But in saying that, I think you know, so it was. I guess it was the fourth highest grossing weekend in the country ever, which is pretty crazy. But I think that's what it'll take for like movie theaters, to like make it an event. People want to come and do
Mm-hmm.
this thing, and like Alva, the theater here in Alva had like pink night and come watch Barbie and wear pink. And like as a movie lover, I'm all for let's not lose movie theaters. I think I would just crawl
Yeah,
in a hole and you know,
that'd be sad. That's like a common grace in a really messed up world.
right.
We still have movie theaters. They haven't gotten rid
Yep.
of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't know. Barbie, I heard a lot of mixed reviews on Barbie. I heard like some people were like, it's okay. All the conservative um, echo chambers were just pissed off about it. And I'm like, and Deborah's like, I didn't notice much that was like that bad. So it's kind
No.
of funny. She said it was an okay movie, but yeah, she didn't really notice any like political charged stuff, which maybe
I'm
there
you know
was, but I don't know.
I think you could find it in anything if you went in looking for that. I could see where it was a pretty feminist heavy movie. Um I don't think in a bad way. Girl power. It I like movies that question my way of thinking, and almost challenge the way of the
Yeah.
world, if you will. And I think the main point. So Deborah saw it. You didn't see it?
Yeah. No, I didn't see it. I
Okay.
was doing something. I don't remember what, but
You were doing
something
anything
important.
else?
Anything else? I wasn't interested in Barbie at all. But
It's. I think you might enjoy it. It's kind of a thinking movie,
all right.
but it's disguised. It's there's definitely still the Barbie stuff in it, but um, it kind of raises the question like, do men rule the world, and what if women ruled the world, and what does that mean for anybody to rule the world essentially, right? Like, I mean, I don't want to get too deep into it because I haven't really sat back and reflected on the movie yet, but it's kind of what I took from it was what's your identity, and does your identity depend on what people say it should be? You know, so they go to the real world. Barbie and Ken go to the real world, right? And Will Ferrell is he's like the not Marvel, Mattel. He's the Mattel like chairman or whatever. And Ken like realizes that men have it way better in the real world than in Barbie world because in the Barbie world they're just like accessories. And he just wants Barbie to notice him. That's his whole thing. And I
Adds
thought it
up.
was
Adds up.
I thought it was a good message, like challenging just the system of, we never had a woman president. you know I don't know how accurate the depiction of the Mattel boardroom was, but I don't really get offended, I guess. If you look to get offended, it's probably going to be easy to do.
Yeah, and just from what I heard about it, I don't know. It seemed like it was just there wasn't anything big that week, so people were like, let's attack this. I don't know, but sometimes I get it. Other times I'm like, eh. But anyway, I didn't see it. I'll have to go see it for myself. I'm just posing right
It's
now.
not bad.
But yeah, I do think it's cool. Part of why I love the book is I was like, man, I read this book called Seculosity, and it was basically like you can't escape religion. Like everything you do is religious, whether you're an atheist, whether you're a Buddhist, an agnostic, or whatever. Everything you do, you have these fundamental like presuppositions or things lurking behind what you're doing, even if you're just like denying it with every breath in you. And so it was kind of cool just to see you kind of like pick out those themes in each movie. And I personally, I think good movies are inescapably Christian values. I would argue for that. What I think a good movie is usually, because atheists will a lot of times agree on, hey, don't, kick your grandmother in the ankles for no reason, just for fun. So it's like when people reach for the good, I think that you could argue for them reaching for Christian values. So I like to watch movies and try to find that even in the most dismal movies. So I think it's kind of an interesting idea. But
yeah, so my challenge, I didn't end up doing it, but about a month before my book was published, Deadpool came out. Did you ever watch Deadpool?
I don't know. I don't think so.
I think you would know if you did. It was pretty rough, like just as R-rated as you can get.
Okay, I don't think I ever finished it for whatever reason. Maybe because it was, I don't know. Yeah.
I just liked it so much. It was just really different, like it was irreverent, but it had heart, and the whole idea of the character knowing that he's in a movie, I just was kind of fascinated by that. But I wanted to put it in the book just to try to do it almost as like a challenge. Because I agree with you. It's like even in, these movies that have no right to, you shouldn't be able to find, that kind of, like you said, Christian values. I think you can. And for me, I could say, especially at this point in my life, and I would say even just as an adult, Jesus as a storyteller is, I think, where it's my favorite Jesus thing. You've disappeared on me. Are you still there?
I'm still here. I think we'll still be fine on the recording, but I may have just disappeared on your end for whatever reason.
Okay, gotcha. So,
Weird.
what was I saying? I lost my train of thought.
Jesus as a storyteller?
Oh, yeah. And maybe it has to do with preaching and having to do that every week, but I just found that that's his thing. And that's the thing I identify with is here's a way, let's say Jesus notices that the world is full of people who hate their enemies, right? I mean, that's pretty relevant today. So then he goes and tells a story of a Jewish guy who's beaten and robbed and left for dead, right? And all the religious people pass by, and then his greatest known enemy, the Samaritan, is the one that goes above and beyond. And so I think, Jesus could have been like, hey, everybody, love your enemies. And you're not going to get very far. But when you tell it as a story and you go, man, I'm invested now. I like this guy. I hope somebody rescues him. And then you have to face the fact that the guy that rescues the guy that you like is the enemy. So it's almost like, I don't know what you would parallel that with today. But if you could tell a story today where people resonated with a character and it forced them to love or to accept the idea of loving, say, their political enemy, I think you could see people's, hearts start to soften a little bit.
For sure.
And that's storytelling.
Yeah, I think that's pretty big.
Yeah.
I like it. I like Jesus. He was a cool guy. He was a cool God man. Man. Yeah, just thinking about all the tension underneath the groups that he was talking to. Because he was talking to, there was 24, I think, different Jewish sects, and he was somehow like speaking in between all of that and saying the exact right thing that he needed to say. So that's, only he could do that. Only he could tell stories that well. That's something I honestly want to get better at is telling stories. Deborah's dad is amazing. I need to have him on here just to tell stories that he's told us, 20 times. But I think that's kind of a lost art. So it's kind of cool to bring that back. Hear people do that well. And it's generally older people that are like on the way out. So it's like, man, we need to learn how to do that. So,
right.
But
we get really good at it cool. Right toward the end.
Yeah. How are you doing on time, man? I wanted to ask you about pastoring, but I want to honor your time and I don't want to keep you too long.
I got all the time in the world.
Cool. I'll keep you here till 3 a.m. All right. Cool. all the time in the world. Okay. So yeah, you mentioned just preaching. Is that, so you've been preaching for what, 14 years?
Oh no.
Or is that just total being in ministry time?
That's full-time ministry. Let's see. Yeah. So next May will be 15 years. So I was in full-time youth ministry or campus ministry for 8 years, from 2009 to 2017. Then I became a senior minister in 2017 at the First Christian Church of Hennessy. And we were there for 2 years, and then we've been here for 4 years. So 6 years of full-time senior ministry or preaching.
Man. So, I mean, that's a lot of preaching. I probably should have mentioned this. I'm slowly trying to move in the direction of pastoral ministry.
Hey, cool.
It's going to be slow, but
I forgot you went to a Bible college, didn't you?
I did. That was part of my crumbling, my foundation crumbling.
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's funny how that
years,
works,
2
right?
years at a Bible school. Yeah.
You want your
question a lot of things.
You want your religious foundation to crumble? Go to school for it.
Yeah. That's very true. Very true. I saw a lot of things that I was like, I don't know about that. I don't,
right.
And like we came from a very charismatic church, and which honestly that's something I usually bring up on the podcast too. But maybe we can talk about that a little bit.
Whatever you want.
Yeah, I was just curious. Like, that's a lot of sermon prep. That's a lot of sermons. How difficult has it been for you to prep for that? I mean, do you find it difficult to have something ready every Sunday, or are you more in a rhythm, or
there's weeks where it's tough, just depending on the week. More often than not, and I'm an ADHD brained type of a person, so I have to do it all at once. I have friends that will start their sermon on Monday and kind of work on it throughout the week.
Yeah.
There's no way I could do that. I've done everything from working on it on Monday morning and finishing it to working on it on Sunday morning day of and finishing it, and everything in between. Ideally, I like to sit down on like a Tuesday or Wednesday and knock it out, because that gives me
Yeah.
enough time of a mental break from Sunday. But then also, doing it on Saturdays, like, it's kind of nerve wracking. Like, you can't enjoy your day or your night doing that. Um, it's not too bad. Once I figured out, so I went kind of through phases. I used to do my sermons in like notes, so I just jot down bullet points and notes, and I noticed that I was just rambling a lot, and who knows how long they were, probably torturous. Um,
Oh
and
man.
then actually, it was my ordination service. I was supposed to give a meditation on communion, and so I wrote out a one-page meditation. And somebody came up to me who's a member of my church, and I think this is both a compliment and an insult. And they said that was probably the best sermon I've ever heard you preach, and it wasn't even a sermon. Um, but I knew immediately what it was, and it was that I wrote it out word for word. Um, and so from then on, I've typed out my sermons word for word and just have practiced essentially reading them, but trying to make it come off like I'm not reading it.
Yeah.
Um, but no, it's not hard. It's hard when your week gets thrown off by life
Yeah.
or church work,
Right.
and you got to find time to do it. But it's not too bad. You could do it.
Yeah. Has the well, I've been trying to write sermons. I'd written some years ago, just for random times people needed it. But so I've been trying to practice. So far, not having the obligation has been pretty tough. but
Right.
but so has you were talking about storytelling. Like, has that filtered into a lot of your sermons, or is that more rare in
Oh, yeah.
sermons as to other places? Or
No, I've always kind of incorporated stories for sure.
that's cool.
One of the best things I ever did, and you could probably do the same if you're working on it, is I watch other preachers, but also go and watch stand-up comedians, because they are masters at storytelling and keeping people engaged, and also like timing and rhythm. And
Mm-hmm.
you could have the best story in the world, but if your delivery sucks, people are going to fall asleep. And so
Yep.
I've watched a lot of like Seinfeld, even ones that aren't really clean. It's still kind of beneficial to, like, Dave Chappelle is a master storyteller. I've seen stuff of his that's not even that funny, but I've been glued to the screen because of how good he is at telling a story, right? So
He's a gifted individual
yeah, I try to
for
like
sure.
just absorb as much of that as I can. I don't know
Yeah.
that I've ever done a sermon without telling a story of one kind or another.
Nice. Well, it's cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, I guess we could kind of move into what does your personal walk with the Lord look like? What are some practical ways that you've kind of have helped you, especially in the ADD spirit? I can relate to that. Um,
Yeah.
the seemingly inability to focus for any length of time. It's probably partly just living in the culture that we live in, but
Hmm.
um, so I mean, have there been any practical things that come to mind? And I know you mentioned some in the book, but yeah, anything like that that kind of helps you get in the Word or just connect with the Lord and
Yeah.
things like that.
It's, gosh, it is a challenge, because it's like, I hate to simplify it like this, but I think it works. I was in college. I worked at a ice cream, frozen custard place, and while I worked there, I never wanted ice cream ever. Like even if I had the week off, I wouldn't go and get ice cream. Um, and you can easily fall into that as far as like you're here every day and you're doing this every day. It's kind of easy to be like, I don't want to think about this outside of work. And so I've had times where I've gone a long period of time almost just relying on work to be my faith life. And that's kind of a dangerous uh, place to be. Um, but you just kind of bounce back and you figure out how to get back into it. I've found that journaling prayers has been probably the number one as far as avoiding the ADHD traps. Taking time in the morning and writing out my prayers.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just feels like I'm able to, stay on track. And there's a little more honesty coming out. I think you avoid uh, the rambling that can happen in a prayer, or you fall back on saying the same things all the time. I would try to challenge myself to pray for different things or pray in different ways. Sometimes it's just venting. Sometimes it's, see if I can go a whole prayer or a whole week maybe without asking for anything, or, uh, different little prompts. That's probably the number one. I think teaching also helps because I'm in conversation with college age kids who are really curious. Um, Twice a week for the whole school year. So it keeps me kind of actively thinking and
Yeah.
meditating, reading. It is tough though. I, I've always felt like Christians that I know who live out their faith best are not pastors. They're just regular people.
Yeah. Just
Um,
being faithful for 50
yeah,
years. Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely.
So it's
Yeah.
tough. I hope my hope has always been that like God will have a little bit of grace with that whole concept of being so wrapped up in it all the time that there are nights where I won't pray before I go to bed just because I don't want to turn that part of my brain back on,
Yeah.
you know. And I think I'm okay with that. Sometimes I would feel guilty about it or whatever, but I found a good balance.
Yeah. No, I think you can definitely get into like a beat yourself up. Josh, my brother Josh, whom I think anyone listening would probably know, now that you know, didn't need to be said. He would always say, and I don't know if he made this up, but he would always say, "Don't let not reading your Bible, keep you from reading your Bible. Don't let not praying keep you from praying." And that stuck with me a lot because I did tend to and I still do oh, I have to do these certain things this way, or else I didn't do it, or I
Right.
wasn't doing the proper. I didn't do the proper things I needed to do, which is like, dang. I mean, you're just going back to Pharisees, like you're
Yeah.
making up these rules for yourself that aren't necessarily scriptural, and you discount all the little prayers throughout the day and all the things that you thought about throughout the day, just conversations with the Lord and with yourself. And so I think it's important to, even as pastors, and the pastors that I know are very transparent about that, but just being honest about, yeah, I don't always meet this mark that I have, and that's okay. It's get back on the horse the next day, and
Right.
that's always been really encouraging to me. But yeah, man. So you have 3 daughters, which I'm very jealous about because we have one daughter, but we have a boy on the way. So
Oh,
I was
hey,
a little bummed about
congratulations.
that, but it's all right.
You were
Um,
bummed? Why were you bummed about it?
I just wanted girls, man. I wanted girls. I had one, and I was like, man, this girl's awesome. I've lived with guys. Omega's a girl, but she's basically bullied into
Yeah.
being being not girly. So, but
I was kind of that way. I was like, I know how to parent this thing, so just give me another one. Um, yeah,
yeah,
it's fun. It's a lot. I found that the jump from 1 to 2 wasn't bad. The jump from 2 to 3 was rough. I think you'll have fun with the jump from 1 to 2 because now, what's your daughter's name?
Hazel.
Hazel. Hazel. Yeah. Because now she'll have a little buddy. You know.
Very excited about that. She's an extrovert, so it'll be nice. It'll be good for Deborah
Yeah.
because Deborah's home all day. So
Oh yeah.
for her to have somebody to play with. I mean, we've had her siblings over this week, and we haven't had to entertain Hazel at all. She's just been, walking around looking at everybody.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man.
Man.
So like, my question was like, do you? Oh, go ahead. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
No. I was gonna say, speaking of your family, I haven't got the chance to go see Stoney and Allie yet, who I'm really good friends with. But man, heartbreaking about Lynn. I just wanted to tell you
Yeah,
that. I was thinking
yeah,
about your
that's a
family,
tough one. Yeah,
but
uh,
I didn't know anything, and then it was like I think my sister told me, and it blew my mind. But I didn't mean to make this about that. I was just going to tell you guys I was thinking about you.
yeah, appreciate that. Yeah, it's been.
But what were you going to say?
Oh, what was I going to say? Oh yeah, I was just going to kind of ask, raising kids and stuff. Does that, to me, it freaks me out to think about raising kids in 2023. A lot of times, I think I can kind of give in to like, what happens when they're confronted with this and that, and cultural things that we look at and we're like, oh, that's there's no good or anything beautiful or lovely about that, and that your child's going to encounter that, younger and younger, and I don't know if you worry about that type of thing. I think about how are they going to confront that, and am I going to be able to instill in them the values to like work through those things and that type of thing.
Yeah.
So I don't know what your experience has been like thinking through that. I know your kids are still pretty young and all that, but yeah.
I definitely think about it too. I try not to let it overwhelm me. I will say that so when I first took a job as a senior pastor, which was also the job happened to be a solo pastor. I was the only person on staff. I was about a month out from starting that job, and I was talking to Pastor Derek, and I said, "Just give me like give me the realest advice you can, like real practical, how to succeed advice." And he said, "Oh, it's easy. The best way to succeed is love people." He's like, you won't fail if you love people. I was like, okay. And so far that's proved to be true. And I think I've let myself use that in parenting. I have to think just loving them so well will pay off, right?
Yeah, I think so.
I hope so.
Yeah, that's like, I hope, yeah. But no, that's good. I'm always like, okay, what does it look like? And, trying to define all the things and like,
Yeah.
But I think that's absolutely right. That's wisdom.
It's probably
right
harder
there.
than that. Yeah. But I'm just going to ride that wave until I have to make a harder decision.
Yep. No, that's good. That's good. That's probably, if that was really how concise Pastor Derek was, I'm surprised.
No. That was definitely an hour and a half conversation.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's awesome, man. Well, I don't want to keep you too long. But I do need to know, is there a part 2 coming out?
Gosh,
Throw some more movies together.
I've I've opened a Word document and I've like written a few things down, and that's all it's come to. I think if there's a part 2, I will either be life would have to look a little different. I think maybe that means like my kids are graduated, something. With 3 kids, the church, and teaching at the school, it's a lot.
A lot going on. Yeah.
When I have free time, I don't want to be on my computer. So I don't know. Maybe the bug will hit me. Um,
Yeah.
but one of your questions: are you on a time limit?
Not at all.
You had a question that I was afraid of, and then I thought about it more, and I was like, "Oh man, I think I would be disappointed if we didn't talk about it."
Uh-oh. What was that? I gloss over things a lot, not on purpose. Could it have been politics? I thought we brushed up
Yeah,
against it.
that's what it was. Yep. I don't
Dude,
know
hit me
how I
with it.
didn't. I don't know. What's your question? Maybe
What's your point A and point B? I mean, did you start out with certain like leanings, and maybe are you more one way than you were before, or are there certain whatever
just in
political
general?
things that you've maybe changed your mind on, or yeah.
Man,
Do you think Trump's
it's
in
one
charge
of.
of the military?
uh,
We're
um,
veering.
that's why. No, I was like, I shouldn't have the urge to talk about politics, but it's one of those things. It's almost so fun. The pain of it. Uh,
We're
you
all
don't want to
thinking about
ignore
it.
it. No, gosh, I'd have
I
to
try
think
to
of how
stay out of
to.
it, but it's hard.
It is hard, and I think I also had a professor who harped on the idea that if you're involved in the people business, which is Jesus's business, that's because politics is just people doing life together. I hate the phrase "doing life." Um, it's just one of those church phrases that got stuck in Christian vocabulary, and I'm like, get it out. But
Get
I
out of
do
there.
think that that's what politics is, right? It's like trying to figure out how to live life together as people. Um, and so I try to follow Jesus. That's such a cliche. Um, the thing I always come back to is he lived in the world as it was, and it was almost like he existed outside of the uh, like state politics, government realm, not politics as a philosophy. Like he he definitely involved himself with people and life and how life was supposed to be lived. Um, it just seems like he wasn't caught in that like trap of getting sucked into the politics as we think of it, right?
Yeah, I think so. It seemed like he always had a way of using it, but not in the same way that sometimes we use it.
Right.
I think I know what
So
you're trying to put your finger on, but I'm not 100% sure.
no, but to answer your question, I was raised pretty conservative. Uh, and then I think the best way for me to describe it is just that kind of just melted into taking every situation at a time. Um, I hesitate to ever say like, oh, "This is what I believe about every issue," you know. a political issue. One of the main reasons for that is I had a rough conversation. Actually, crazily enough, two rough conversations back to back within the course of like 6 months. The first year I was in a senior pastor role about abortion. And so one was a girl that came into the church who was struggling because she had had an abortion, struggling with churches, or I guess her home church and then another church she was involved with, both kind of like chastising her, essentially like, I would say kicking her out, but that's sort of, I think, how she felt it was happening. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And she had been caught. People had been outside of her house with signs that said like "baby killer," and these were like church groups, and so that kind of hit me, and made me say, well, I have to think about it differently now, and I don't know what that way is, but it's got to be different from how I used to think about it. And then the other one was
you're kind of in that point where they meet, right? I mean, you have to actually help someone who did do that, and maybe they feel bad about it, maybe they don't, but you have to pastor them through that, and that's a little
Right.
different than just saying, well, yeah, of course, I believe abortion's wrong, me personally, but like, and I think it's pretty clear, but also, yeah, like that situation, if there's a wrong way to deal with it, that sounds like that's it.
Yeah.
So that's a really tough.
The other one was a
that's tough.
A pastor friend of mine. He was more, well, I knew him. We weren't really close, but we were close for a little while. And he had his wife had went through a situation where she had been told, I don't remember what the complication was, but essentially she had a long ways to go and it wasn't going to be pretty. And they told her, like, there's zero chance that the baby lives. And of course, they want to pray for a miracle. And they were very anti-abortion. Not that this is all that politics is, but this is just what came to my head.
Right.
And his wife came to him, I think, skipping through all the details of the story. Essentially, his wife came to him in tears and said, I can't do it anymore. And she was telling him she wanted to have an abortion. And he just, I don't know how he would describe it, but what I remember was him saying, essentially, okay, whatever you want to do, I support you, and we'll figure this out. And for him, it became, I remember him talking to him afterwards, and it was just it's not like he changed from one drastic, one side to the other completely, but it was more about like, I can't say this is always right or always wrong. And he just, the way he worded it, I can't remember. Something about being called to the moment. In this moment, what is the need? What's the best way to love? What's the best way to follow Jesus? And it was a tough situation. So
yeah, sounds like it.
I find myself in every area of politics trying to avoid the blanket statement of like, this is what I believe all the time about this political issue, or this is what I believe to be 100% right or 100% wrong. And it makes it hard to like identify with like a, political candidate or a party. It's like, I don't know if I really fit anywhere.
Yeah, I think that's a common experience. Like politically homeless is what they're calling it now. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess
What?
yeah. I don't know. On situations where the what's a more what am I thinking? I can't think. Situations where the mom's life is in danger. I believe, and this isn't a biblical stance or anything, but I believe it's legal even now in Oklahoma if that's the situation. I think could be wrong on that, but
I've never really. I
yeah,
should know.
but yeah, no, I don't know. I definitely, yeah. I mean, you probably know like where I'm at on that, but like I have not had to pastor anybody through that, and I think that'd be very
No,
tough.
it is tough.
You're there and you can't do much. You're just there. So yeah,
She was wanting me to tell her. That's what that was one of the hardest parts about it. She was wanting me to tell her. I can't remember. She either felt. God, this was so long ago. She either felt guilty about it and wanted me to ease her mind, or she didn't feel guilty about it and wanted me to ease her mind. Either way, I couldn't remember.
and so did they expect her to like? Was she supposed to die if she tried to have the baby, or like what was the deal?
No,
Or do you remember?
she was young, didn't have like a supporting family. It would have been a situation where she would have either had to have the baby and give it up for adoption, or um, essentially, try to scrounge by.
Yeah,
Um, and this was like probably a 1 or 2 hour conversation, and I never saw her again. And so
yeah,
it was weird, and I don't remember. I wish I could remember all of it, but
mm-hmm.
that was what I came out was just like this overwhelming feeling of maybe it's not the purpose of Christianity to like have a stance on everything as much as it is what does this person need right now from me in this moment. um, and I felt like I needed to be better because I think before my thought was, well, if I have the right stance on everything, I'm good.
Mm-hmm.
And in that moment, my stance didn't matter, right? Like that's not what she needed. Um, so I was ill prepared for that.
Yeah. No, I even think of like I've been to deathbed visits, and that's just another situation where it's like no matter how much training you have, you, you don't really
Mm-hmm.
have the tools to deal with how dark just someone dying who's not ready to die, like just
Mm-hmm.
even someone who's ready to die. It's like we just weren't built to deal with that, I don't think.
What do you
I don't
think
know.
the church's role in the political world is?
That's a
I,
hard
I
one.
struggle.
I've been thinking about it a lot, but at the same
Let me
time
tell you my let me tell you my struggle, and then we can wrap it up if you need to.
cool.
Um,
You good?
my struggle is I feel like, especially with presidential elections, it's such a big extravaganza, like it's a fiasco. Um, I feel like on a national or even maybe worldwide scale, it's actually probably hard for them not to use Christianity as like a vote for me, I'm the Christian, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That that's probably been my biggest issue in all of ministry, as far as politics is concerned, is just the idea that one, there's a Christian party or a non-Christian party, um, but two, do politicians even care, or is it just a matter of getting votes? Like if I say I'm the Christian candidate and I'm in a small town running for mayor, right? And if there's only one other person and they're outspokenly non-Christian, I've probably got it wrapped up, right?
Mm-hmm.
And is
Yeah,
that
I
is that using Christianity?
I think it's absolutely used. I think it's the what is it, the Machiavelli? It's kind of his
Yeah,
tactic of like,
yeah,
you don't have to be good, just appear to be good. And that's been the political handbook probably before that, but ever since. I mean, I don't believe that Trump is a Christian. Maybe he is. I can't tell that. I can't really know that, but I seriously have my doubts about that. DeSantis, I really have my doubts about that. But
I I
and I
haven't paid
can't know
much
that,
attention,
but
but
best, I guess the best you can do is, are they at least going to try to do what they say they're going to do? And honestly, I mean, I'm fine with voting for Trump, not because I think he's a Christian or because I love the guy, but I mean, I think he tried in some areas that I appreciated. But as far as what the goal of the, or how the church should interact with politics, I used to take more of a, Martin Luther kind of talked about two kingdoms, uh, and he kind of made a distinction between the secular and the Christian, the church.
mhm.
And the church was more of a, we we have the sacraments, we dispense forgiveness, baptism, Lord's Supper, like that's our lane. We do good works, but we're not necessarily the political. And obviously, he was thinking about it way different than we do now, because it was a different setup. But he kind of had that conception, and for a while, I liked that. It made sense. Then I kind of came across some more reformed, I guess, streams. I don't know if you have you heard of Jeff Durbin.
Mm-mm.
Apologia.com. He puts out a really good stuff. He does a lot of abortion stuff. He does a lot of like just debates with different groups, and he debated an LGBT theologian. It's what the guy calls himself, but LGBT theologian. So he does that kind of stuff. He'll talk to anybody. He'll do debates, but he holds to like a position of theonomy, which, if I'm
Mm-hmm.
understanding it right, is much more of a, if the Bible advocates for this, we should not only personally advocate for this, but we should politically like advocate for these things. And I think that's more where I'm at right now. I don't know
Yeah.
how that's supposed to look necessarily. And obviously, gentleness and respect is supposed to be a mark of Christians. So I think it needs to be done in that way. But
Yeah.
I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at right now, though.
It's hard.
But the two kingdoms was alluring for a while, and it still kind of is. I mean, I don't know.
I
Maybe it's somewhere
I
in the
get
middle.
that. No, I feel like it's relevant somewhat.
Yeah, they draw on like
It's
what standard are you drawing from, And as soon as you divert from, if the Word of God is the standard, um, he would say, if you're pulling from other places to say this or this is right or wrong, then you become the standard. You become kind of the reference point. I don't know. And to me, that's a compelling argument.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't
No,
know.
that's good.
He has a way of saying things that it's hard to disagree with too. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I guess that's kind of where I'm at with that.
It's hard because I'm always torn between, do I care about this thing that essentially I'm a drop in a bucket, right? In the political realm. Um Now I guess it's different when you're talking about advocating for stuff, if in a local level or just in your own world, um, or in your own circles. But I feel like I'm being pulled away from caring as much. I have this vision of Jesus just walking around like, here's a situation, I'm going to encounter this woman who's being stoned, or I'm going to encounter this guy that needs healed, whatever it is. And I always just kind of picture him like floating from place to place, responding to things that are happening, right? And obviously, Jesus didn't have the connection to the entire world that we do, at our fingertips. Um, but it feels to me that's the more Christian thing to do, is live life with the people around you and try to be like Jesus to them. Because I don't know about you, but if I let myself get sucked into the any kind of political landscape, but especially it seems like the presidential election every 4 years is like just so
Ugh,
toxic.
it's horrible.
And then I feel like I'm not as good of a Christian anyway. I'm like, well, I could care less, but is that the right move? I don't know.
Yeah, it's a tough one. I think you're right, though. I mean, those things do play out, and honestly, that's a kind of a conservative thing to say. Really, is like these things play out in your family before they play out anywhere else. I don't know
Right?
if you're familiar with Jordan Peterson. I don't think he's a
Yeah,
Christian, but he's
I
like,
know who you're talking
clean
about.
your room before you criticize the world. Take care of yourself first and your family, and then the rings go out. And I think that's right.
Right.
I mean, there's very little you can do on a federal level. I think you should vote. I'm really skeptical and really depressed when I do vote, but I think, yeah, I don't know. I think you're right, though. I think we should focus more on the realm immediately around us, just like Jesus did.
Yeah.
Well said, sir. Well said.
Well, I'm
Well,
glad we dove into that.
yeah, that's cool. That's cool. Um, you're right. I'm wrong. I'm right. You're wrong. I'm just no.
Yep.
Yeah, man. So I like to leave people off with maybe if you have, is there something you've been meditating on? Like, I like to call it chugging content. Have you been chugging any good content lately?
Oh
And
man.
within that, is there any maybe encouragement you want to leave people with, or that kind of thing? And then I'll let you go, man. My wife's
Gosh,
probably angry right now. I'm just kidding. She ain't angry.
what content
She
have I
chill.
been chugging? You like? I'll give you two answers. Do you like? I know you like Lord of the Rings,
Oh yeah.
fantasy, sci-fi. I stumbled upon Star Trek: Strange New Worlds. Surprisingly good, and it kind of
Nice.
explores some issues, big picture and small picture, real life issues in a sci-fi way. Um, that's the content I've been binging lately. I think I'm out of
Nice.
episodes. The worst feeling ever when you're out of episodes. Um, let's see, from a theological Christian standpoint. Ah man, it's been a while since I've read anything new. I've been doing a lot of rereading, especially when I'm teaching classes. It's hard to like, I'm going to read this theology book for fun. Um,
Yeah.
I've been kind of drawn lately to reading people who aren't the mainstream, uh, kind of that prime Christian way of thinking. Like, I don't know what you'd call it. I guess the mainline fundamental, uh, you know, the same thing everybody reads, or And so if something's different, I'll go, I wonder what that is.
Mm-hmm.
Gosh, I can't get anything specific to pop into my head.
No worries.
What I'm preaching on, other than doing a movie series, ironically, is going to be connection. The idea of kind of connecting in the sense of like, gosh, I'm really struggling to get my thoughts out of my mouth.
Story of my life.
Give me a second. I'm used to 3 kids screaming at me.
I can do that if you want.
No, that's good.
I can scream.
Basically, the idea that, you know, you hear people say, oh, you can be a Christian in your car. You can worship in your car. What does it mean to be part of the church, connected to other people, and I guess the magnitude, and really what I feel like is the purpose of a Christian life being to do it with other people. I'm in the early stages of a sermon series, and that's why I can't give you any specifics because I haven't got it all ironed out yet. But
cool.
That's kind of where I'm at.
Nice. Yeah.
What about you?
All the promises were given to a group, not an individual.
Right.
That's good. That's good. Me? Well, I've been reading this book called My Church Smells Like Popcorn. Reading has been a little tougher lately. I'm also reading Paul Johnson Church History, which has been very interesting. I don't super trust the guy, but it's very interesting. It's good. He's breaking down all the, Jewish history and before he even gets to early church and stuff.
Yeah.
So it's fascinating, but
I like.
And I'm always plugging content on the way to work and stuff too. But yeah,
I don't super trust the guy.
Yeah, I'm trying to be okay with that.
Yeah.
Step out of the comfort zone. It's okay if you hear something that you don't like.
Right.
We're not that fragile. So
let me ask you this: is Deborah there?
She is here. She is present somewhere.
Has she ever been on the podcast?
She hasn't. She refuses to. She does want to interview me on the podcast, which I'm like, sure, but I haven't been able to get her on yet.
Will she come on for 30 seconds?
See if I can get her. While we're waiting, I love debates. I'll watch any debate that I can watch. That's like my addiction.
Really?
Oh yeah. Yeah, it's so unsettling to hear people disagree. I love it. I'll be right back. I gotta unlock the door. I didn't want Hazel walking in. She's on the way. You're requested.
Oh.
You're still on the podcast, by the way.
Oh, no.
So don't spout any heresy.
Drew!
Hey.
Drew,
how are you doing?
Oh, I can't hear you.
I told them I couldn't get you on, so.
Oh. What's up?
I just wanted you to. I want one interview question from Deborah.
Oh, man. Oh, gosh. This is
Can
so
I show
much
you
pressure.
in my office still for?
I know what it is. It's the guy on the couch.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of how I could ask that question.
I love I have stuff in my office that sparks conversation. And it's my favorite thing that someone says, "What is that?" And I go, "Let me tell you. Let me tell you a story."
Oh, that's my favorite thing. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing.
It's a beautiful thing.
Hey, congratulations on
Deborah secretly hates you now, so.
I just have my child's food on my shirt. right now.
That's all I ever have on me.
Oh, I've got a question for you. Want to hang out
Okay.
soon?
Yes.
I already delivered that one.
Okay, that was my question.
That was the easiest question.
Okay, you're welcome.
We'll plan it.
Sounds good.
It's good to see you.
Cool.
Yes, great to see you. I can't wait to listen to this one. Super excited.
Bro, thanks for giving me an hour and 30 minutes of your night.
I like
I
this.
appreciate it.
I like my screen right now. I think you guys should do like couples
Bro.
podcast.
Well, we were on a dating podcast, so
Yeah.
no big deal.
No
Oh,
big deal.
Yeah,
That's exciting.
She's a lot more fun than me, so she honestly needs to be on. But
Oh no.
I'm extremely boring.
no, it was
But-
fun.
Yeah, man.
great.
Hey, I'm going to hang up on you, but stay on there for
Yeah.
a second.
All right.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yay!
Reverend
Good to
Drew
see you
Kirtley,
guys.
everybody.